They told us the ocean was empty the deeper you went. Darkness, silence, crushing pressure, nothing but a barren world. That's what I believed until I joined the expedition. My name doesn't matter. If you're reading this, I'm already gone, or I will be soon. What matters is this: the ocean is not empty. It is full of things we were never meant to see. I was part of a 3-man crew tasked with piloting the Nereus II, a state-of-the-art submersible built for extreme depth exploration. The mission was simple on paper: reach 36,000 feet, collect data, test the new pressure-resistant hull. The Mariana Trench was our destination. It was supposed to be history in the making. When the hatch sealed above us, I felt a strange finality. The air inside the sub was sharp with metallic tang, recycled and dry. We strapped into our seats, the hum of machinery surrounding us like a heartbeat. Captain Howard gave the nod, and the descent began. The surface faded quickly, light dissolving into dark green, then black. The ocean swallowed us whole. The only illumination came from our exterior lights, casting pale cones into endless water. Schools of fish darted past, then thinned out until there was nothing but drifting particulates, snow of the deep. At 10,000 feet, the pressure gauge clicked higher, the hull creaking like an old ship. I tried to steady my breathing. Every groan of the metal skin felt like a warning. "Relax," Howard said, calm as stone. "This thing can handle it, stronger than steel." But Singh, our engineer, wasn't convinced. His fingers tapped against the console, too fast, too sharp. Metal bends, metal breaks, nothing's unbreakable. We kept going. At 20,000 feet, something strange happened. The sonar ping returned, delayed, just by a fraction of a second, but enough that Howard leaned forward, frowning. "Glitch?" I asked. Singh shook his head. "Not a glitch. Something big down here, bigger than we expected." I stared at the sonar display, a single dot, faint, moving against the stillness. But it wasn't swimming. It was waiting. The sub lurched, just a tremor, barely noticeable, but the kind you feel in your stomach more than your feet. Singh froze, eyes wide. "You felt that too, right?" he whispered. Howard's jaw tightened. "Keep her steady. Could be a current. But there are no currents that deep." At 28,000 feet, the light outside changed. Not brighter, just different. Tiny organisms drifted past, glowing faint blue, then red, then spiraling into complex patterns. They weren't random. They moved like signals, pulsing, repeating. "Jesus," I murmured. "It's like language." No one responded. We switched off the exterior lights. The patterns grew clearer, surrounding us, forming rings. The sub was a speck inside an enormous constellation of living lights. They pulsed together, once, twice, pause, 3 times, like a code. Howard whispered, "It's not for us." But he was wrong, because the next pulse came from below, so deep it felt like the earth itself was answering. The entire sub shook as if something vast had stirred in the abyss. The comm system crackled. At first, just static. Then, through the hiss, a voice. Low, ancient, impossibly far away. It said one word, "Down." We obeyed. The voice didn't echo like normal sound. It bypassed ears and speakers and went straight into bone. One word, carried through the abyss like a command older than language. "Down." Howard's hands hovered above the controls, frozen. Singh whispered, "That wasn't possible. That wasn't." "Keep quiet," Howard snapped, though his own voice trembled. "We stay focused. Instruments only. No imagination." But my imagination was the least of our problems. The sonar flickered. Instead of the neat arcs of terrain, jagged lines stretched across the screen like scars. They bent, then vanished, replaced by a single massive shadow that filled the entire display. "Terrain anomaly?" I asked. Singh shook his head violently. "No terrain moves like that." The sub shuddered again. The hull groaned like something was dragging its nails across the outside. My chest tightened until breathing became work. Howard adjusted the descent thrusters, his face pale under the control panel's glow. 29,000 feet, Singh announced, voice thin. "Pressure nominal. Hull integrity, holding." Nominal, I thought. such a small word for something so fragile. Then we saw them, the lights. Not the gentle bioluminescence of drifting plankton. These were sharp, deliberate, geometric. Hexagons and spirals, weaving in patterns too precise to be random. They glowed in shades of green and violet, shimmering just beyond our lights, retreating when we approached, regrouping when we paused. Howard switched on the forward floodlight. That was when we realized the shapes weren't floating organisms. They were eyes. Dozens of them, each one the size of a dinner plate reflecting back our light. Not free-floating, attached to something massive, its outline obscured by the darkness. I whispered, "How big is it?" No answer. Singh was praying under his breath. Howard's knuckles turned white against the throats. "Tulye." The sonar pinged again, louder, distorted. The shadow moved surrounding us. It wasn't a single creature, it was many. They followed us as we sank, not chasing, not attacking, escorting. "Why aren't they closing in?" I asked. Howard didn't look at me. "Because we're going where they want us to." 30,000 feet. The comms crackled again. Static, broken syllables. I leaned forward, straining to catch it. "Leave. Alone. Not yours." Then a scream of feedback so sharp it pierced my skull. I clutched my headset, teeth grinding. Singh tore his off entirely, blood trailing from his ear. "Turn it off," he shouted. "Kill the comms." Howard hesitated, then flipped the switch. Silence. Blessed, crushing silence. But the moment the comms died, the hull vibrated with a low hum, not mechanical, biological, a resonance that sank into marrow, rattling my teeth. "Jesus," I whispered. "It's singing." The floodlight beam swept downward, cutting into blackness. At first I thought I saw seabed, ridged, uneven stone, but as we descended, the ridges shifted. They weren't rocks, they were spines. An impossible expanse of bone-white structures stretched below, curving upward like the ribs of a buried colossus. They dwarfed our sub, reaching so far in every direction that the edges vanished into darkness. "It's not terrain," Singh breathed. "It's a carcass." The pressure gauge ticked upward, the temperature dropped, frost formed along the windows despite the insulated hull, and yet the ribcage below glowed faintly, as if something within still pulsed with life. Howard whispered, "God help us." But I already knew. Whatever this was, God had never touched it. The deeper we sank, the more the ribcage revealed itself. Each curved bone was thicker than a skyscraper, arcing upward into darkness, disappearing far beyond our floodlight's reach. Between them, the shadows thickened, alive with flickers of movement. I pressed my forehead to the viewport, trying to make sense of scale. "This thing, it can't be real." Singh shook his head, his voice little more than breath. "If it died here, then what killed it?" The question lingered, poisonous, unanswered. Howard broke the silence, his voice clipped, controlled. "Stay focused, collect data, no speculation." But his hands betrayed him, trembling slightly as he adjusted the controls. He was rattled too. The sonar pulsed again, the signal warping as though bouncing off something vast, hollow. A delay followed. Then, impossibly, the ping returned from above us. I glanced at Howard. "How can that be?" He didn't answer. His jaw locked tight, eyes glued to the console. Outside, the eyes had returned. Dozens, no, hundreds, hovering among the bones. Some blinked in eerie synchronicity, others drifted apart, but all of them formed repeating patterns. Hexagons, spirals, lattices too deliberate to ignore. "It's language," I whispered. Singh shook his head violently. No, we shouldn't be seeing this. We're intruders. We need to leave." Howard ignored him, adjusting the thrusters. "Mark the sequence. If it's communication, command will want the data." But in my gut, I knew we weren't intercepting communication. We were inside of it. The lights weren't speaking to each other. They were speaking to us. Then came the sound. At first, a low vibration that made my ribs ache. Then it deepened into rhythm, like the pounding of a war drum. The water outside thrummed with each beat, and the glowing eyes brightened in sync. Boom, boom, boom. My pulse tried to match it, hammering in my chest, until I thought my heart might burst. Singh clutched his temples, moaning. "It's in my head," he gasped. "I can hear it inside." I tried to shut it out, but the rhythm grew more complex, layered beats weaving into patterns, then into something unmistakable. Words, not English, not human, but I understood anyway. "Wake!" The bones below us shuddered. I staggered back in my seat as the ribcage shifted. Sediment exploded upward, a storm of silt clouding the water. Something massive moved beneath, muscles flexing around bones that had looked fossilized moments ago. Singh screamed, "It's not dead!" The sonar screamed back, feedback so violent it nearly blew the speakers. The shadow on the screen grew until it filled the entire display, stretching beyond comprehension. Howard tried to stabilize us, but the sub rocked violently. "Hold on," he barked. The thrusters whined, straining against unseen currents. Through the viewport, I saw it. For the briefest instant, the silt cleared, and an eye the size of our entire vessel opened in the abyss. It wasn't like the smaller ones we'd seen. This was different, ancient, conscious. The light inside it burned brighter than our flood lamps, piercing through the murk, pinning us in place like insects beneath glass. And then it blinked. The water bucked, the hull shrieked, alarms blared. Singh was thrown from his seat, blood smearing the console where his head struck. I tried to haul him back, but the sub twisted violently, spiraling. Through it all, the voice returned, not through comms, not through sound, but inside every cell of my body. "You should not have come." The voice rattled through me like a current, leaving every muscle trembling. "You should not have come." The words weren't sound, but sensation, a vibration in the marrow. They left a taste in my mouth, metallic and bitter, as if I had bitten a live wire. Howard was shouting something, but his voice was drowned by alarms. Red lights strobed through the cabin, the sub groaning as if it might tear apart. Singh slumped unconscious against the console, blood seeping into his collar. I gripped my seat, fighting nausea as the vessel rolled. The massive eye outside tracked us effortlessly, following every flailing movement. Its glow painted the bones below, casting shadows that writhed like living things. Then the current stopped. Everything went still. The alarms died. The sub hung motionless in the water, though Howard's hands stayed locked on the controls. His face had gone pale, slick with sweat. "I didn't cut power," he whispered. The console screens flickered. Numbers warped. Dials spun without input. A symbol appeared across every monitor. 3 interlocking spirals pulsing faint blue. "What the hell is that?" I asked. Howard didn't answer. His hands hovered above the controls, trembling. "It's in the systems," he muttered. "It's steering us." The sub began to move again, slowly, smoothly, without thrusters, pulled downward into the abyss. I pressed my face to the viewport. Shapes gathered among the ribs below, thousands of them, each one glowing faintly. Not fish, not machines, figures. Their forms were wrong for men, too long in the arms, torsos too narrow, but they stood upright, rows upon rows of them, lining the seabed like soldiers awaiting orders. The spirals on the console pulsed faster. Outside, the smaller eyes drifted closer, surrounding us in a living cage of light. I couldn't tell where their bodies ended or began. They weren't swimming. They were peaking. Art of the water itself, forming and dissolving like thought. Howard whispered, "We're not the first down here." I turned sharply. "What do you mean?" He wouldn't look at me. "Command knew something was here. That's why they sent us. Disposable." The words barely left his mouth when the comms sparked back to life. Static hissed, then a human voice crackled through. "Nereus II, do you copy?" Howard's head snapped toward the radio. His hand darted to the switch. "This is Howard. We hear you. We need extraction." The voice interrupted, louder, firmer. "Do not respond. Do not acknowledge. Shut down transmission." I froze. It was our own frequency, but the tone wasn't one of rescue. It was warning. Before Howard could answer, the monitors went black. A shriek reverberated through the hull, metal screaming as if something enormous had wrapped itself around us. The viewport filled with darkness, then with texture, pale, ridged, scarred, skin. The creature had closed the distance. A single enormous appendage slid into view, dragging across the glass. Not a tentacle, not a fin. Something in between, covered in markings that glowed faintly blue, the same spirals now etched into our screens. The touch wasn't an attack. It was deliberate, testing, curious. The voice returned, closer now, threading through my skull like smoke. You are fragile. You are breakable. The sub creaked under invisible pressure. Bolts popped, water beaded at the seams. Howard whispered a prayer. Singh groaned awake, dazed, muttering nonsense. I pressed my hands to my ears, though it made no difference. The voice was inside. We remember you. The water outside erupted in light, thousands of figures illuminated at once, saluting the massive form that held us. And I realized with horror they weren't alive. They were remains, preserved, displayed. An army of the drowned. The figures stood in endless rows, glowing faintly, swaying in the unseen current. Their hollow eyes locked on us, though no life remained within them. They were cadavers, preserved in perfect detail, flesh stretched taut, mouths frozen mid-scream. My stomach lurched. These weren't just victims, they were a warning. Howard's breath fogged the glass as he whispered, "They're trophies." The massive form encircling us shifted, its glow deepening. The spirals etched into its flesh pulsed like veins carrying fire. The rows of the drowned responded in kind, their dim lights flickering in rhythm. A ritual. The thought rooted in my head and refused to leave. We weren't witnessing random phenomena. This was structured, practiced, repeated over eons. We had interrupted a ceremony meant for something beyond comprehension. Singh stirred beside me, clutching his head. Blood streaked his face. He blinked at the rows of corpses, then at the spiraled markings across the creature's skin. "I've seen this before," he croaked. I turned sharply. "What do you mean?" "Carvings," he muttered. "Temple ruins in the Mariana Islands. Same spirals, same alignment. They called it the Deep God." Howard snapped at him. "Shut up. Don't feed into this." But his voice cracked, betraying fear. Outside, the colossal eye returned, staring straight into us. It wasn't simply looking, it was searching. I felt it peel back layers of thought, memories, secrets I hadn't shared with anyone. My first childhood nightmare. The face of my father in his coffin, every shame, every failure pulled forward like specimens under a microscope. I gagged, bile rising. Howard slammed a fist against the console. "No more games!" he roared. "We're not your playthings!" The eye blinked once. The pressure inside the cabin spiked. Singh screamed, clutching his ears as blood poured from them. Panels burst open, sparks flying. Howard staggered, gasping, veins bulging in his neck as if invisible hands squeezed him. I lunged forward, slamming the emergency ballast release. The sub shuddered, heavy weights jettisoning into the abyss. For a moment, we began to rise, but the creature didn't allow it. The lights of the drowned army blazed. A current surged upward, hurling us back down like a toy. We crashed against invisible force, alarms shrieking. The spiral symbol reappeared on every screen, faster, brighter. "You cannot leave." Howard collapsed to his knees, coughing blood. His eyes rolled back, veins spiderwebbing black beneath his skin. Singh tried to crawl away from the console, but the entire cabin vibrated with the voice. "You belong to us now." Something cracked outside. I whipped toward the viewport and froze. The seabed opened. The ribcage we'd mistaken for a carcass wasn't dead. It was a prison. The bones shifted, splitting apart, releasing clouds of silt that danced like smoke. From within the cage, something stirred. Larger than the creature holding us, larger than anything that should exist. The eye outside dimmed, as though bowing. The drowned flickered in unison, kneeling in their watery rows. And then I understood. The being clutching our sub wasn't the god. It was only the sentinel. The true thing, vast, ancient, patient, was waking. The darkness itself seemed to recoil as it stretched, limbs unfolding from the cage, each movement echoing through the ocean like an earthquake. For the first time in my life, I wished for death before sight. The seabed split wider, sediment rising in choking plumes. I pressed my sleeve against my face, though it made no difference. The taste of rot seeped through the recycled air, heavy and undeniable. Something was pushing out from the cage of bones, its bulk forcing centuries of burial aside. Howard staggered to the viewport, his lips trembling. "It's bigger than the trench itself," he whispered. "We never stood a chance." The Sentinel tightened its grip around the sub, the hull groaning under pressure. Its glowing spirals crawled brighter across its skin, flashing in a sequence too deliberate to be random. For a heartbeat, the drowned responded, flickering in identical cadence. It wasn't a display. It was a transfer. My vision blurred. The lights weren't just shining into the water, they were burning into us. Information, symbols, meanings poured straight into my skull. My nose bled, my teeth ached as if they'd rot away. But with the pain came knowledge. Images flashed behind my eyes, ruins swallowed by waves, temples carved with spirals, sacrifices sinking into black water. Generations had served this being. Generations had fed it. Singh moaned, clutching his temples. "They're rewriting us," he gasped. Howard tried to fight it, slamming his fists against the console. "Get out of my head," he shouted, his voice raw, but the spirals pulsed faster, piercing through resistance. His scream cracked into sobs, his body shuddering as if strings pulled him. Then his voice changed. Not his voice anymore, but layered, human sound entwined with something vast. "We were blind," he said through tears. "But now, we are chosen." I felt bile rise. His eyes glowed faint blue, reflecting the spirals. The Sentinel released the sub. We didn't drift upward. Instead, we hovered, suspended by unseen force. Its massive appendage pressed once more against the viewport. This time, the tusk. H wasn't testing, it was marking. A searing burn erupted across my arm. I yanked up my sleeve and nearly screamed. Spirals glowed beneath my skin, carved as though by fire, winding from wrist to elbow. "No," I whispered. "No, no, no." Singh tore at his own shirt. His chest bore the same brand, burned deep into flesh. He sobbed uncontrollably. Howard smiled. The spirals had spread across his neck, crawling toward his face. "It's a gift," he said calmly, reverently. "We're being made whole." The drowned army shifted. One by one, their mouths opened, bubbles spilling upward. For a heartbeat, I thought they were breathing again. But no, they were speaking. Thousands of soundless cries layered over each other, reverberating inside me. The Sentinel echoed them, spirals throbbing like a heartbeat. "Join us," the voice said, "or become hollow." Howard fell to his knees, arms raised. "I accept," he whispered, shaking with awe. I grabbed Singh's arm. "Don't listen, we're still alive. We can fight this." But Singh's eyes darted wildly, his lips trembling with words he didn't mean to say. "It hurts less if you stop resisting." The cage of bones cracked further, releasing another tremor. Something impossibly larger stirred within, its outline too vast to comprehend. The Sentinel bowed low, pressing its bulk against the seabed in reverence. For the first time I understood. This was no mere encounter. This was initiation. We hadn't discovered the ocean's secret. The ocean had discovered us. The ocean floor roared like a collapsing mountain, sediment geysered upward, blotting out what little light remained. Our sub rattled, bolts whining as the cage of bones finally gave way. From the rift below, a shape rose. Not a creature in any sense we understood, but something older. Something whose body was less form and more concept. Vast appendages uncoiled into the abyss, some jointed like limbs, others formless, bending like smoke. Each one shimmered with pale scars, as if reality itself had tried and failed to contain it. I couldn't breathe, not from lack of air, but from the weight of knowing. This thing wasn't simply alive, it was aware. Howard knelt in the sub's cramped cabin, arms lifted in prayer. Spirals had fully claimed his flesh, his eyes glowing steady blue, his voice cracked, full of awe. "The deep god wakes. We are chosen to witness its return." Singh cowered against the console, nails digging bloody crescents into his arms. "We're dead," he muttered over and over. "We're already dead." But death would have been mercy. The drowned army ignited in blinding synchrony, their corpses blazing with unnatural phosphorescence. Their bodies convulsed, arms jerking upward like puppets pulled by unseen strings. One by one, they disintegrated into clouds of light, dissolving into the water, fuel for what was rising. The sentinel's eye dimmed, bowing lower as the colossal form stretched higher. It had been guardian, jailer, servant. Now, freed from millennia of stillness, its god stirred. The sub's systems flickered. Monitors rolled with static until the spiraled emblem reappeared, glowing brighter than ever. My ears filled with the voice again, deeper, resonant enough to splinter thought. Witness, remember, obey. The words weren't request, but command, burrowing into marrow. My arm throbbed, the branded spirals burning hotter. Singh clutched his chest, as screaming, as the pattern carved deeper into his skin. Howard only wept with joy. Yes, he whispered. Yes, take me. Through the viewport, I finally saw its eye, or something worse pretending to be one. Not round, not even symmetrical, but a fissure that opened across fathoms, lined with fractal pupils spiraling inward forever. Looking into it was like drowning in eternity. Every cell screamed to look away, but I couldn't. It pulled me, erasing the concept of self. For a moment, I wasn't in the sub. I wasn't even in water. I was elsewhere, standing in a drowned city of black stone towers, spiral-carved monoliths that reached toward a starless sky. Thousands knelt in the streets, chanting soundlessly. Their faces were blank, their skin etched with glowing lines, and in the distance, rising above their temples, was the same fissured eye, blotting out all else. Then I was back in the cabin, gasping for air. My nose and ears bled freely. Singh lay twitching, foam at his lips. Howard was laughing, serene, as though watching sunrise. The deep god unfurled another appendage, brushing the seabed. The trench floor cracked, a shockwave ripping outward. Our sub spun, metal shrieking, before the sentinel steadied us once more. It wasn't letting us die, not yet. You are seed, the voice said. You will carry us upward. The implication hollowed my gut. This wasn't discovery. It was infection. And we weren't explorers anymore. We were vessels. The deep god turned its gaze higher toward the surface world none of us would ever see the same again. The fissured eye turned upward, its spiral pupils drinking in darkness that stretched all the way to the ocean's ceiling. For the first time, I realized the deep god's hunger wasn't confined to this trench. It was aimed far above, toward the fragile world that had sent us here. Howard pressed his glowing hands against the viewport, his expression beatific. We will be its heralds, he murmured. His voice wasn't his anymore. It carried depth, resonance, the echo of something not human. Singh writhed on the floor, the spirals spreading like fire across his chest and throat. His skin blistered, cracked, glowing faintly beneath. His eyes rolled back, but his mouth whispered words in a language I didn't know yet still understood. Promises, oaths, devotion. I clutched my arm where the brand burned brightest. It pulsed with the same rhythm as the drown that had dissolved into light, as though syncing me with the ritual. My body wasn't mine anymore. It was being rewritten, repurposed. No, I hissed. I won't. I staggered to the console, slamming fists against the dead systems. The controls sparked under my touch but remained unresponsive. The sentinel still held us like a toy in its grip. Its vast eye hovered nearby, watching. Why resist? The voice coiled through me. You were chosen. I didn't choose this, I screamed into the dark. The fissured eye blinked, and for an instant, I felt pity radiate from it. Not cruelty, not anger. Pity, as one might feel toward an animal too stupid to understand its purpose. The god stirred again. Its colossal appendages reached higher, dragging silt into storms. Pressure waves slammed against the hull, each one threatening to crush us flat. Above, the surface seemed impossibly distant, unreachable. And yet I thought of it. Sunlight on water, the taste of salt spray, laughter carried on waves. I thought of the people who had no idea what slumbered beneath their feet. If this thing rose, no ocean, no coast, no nation would survive. Howard turned, his eyes glowing like twin lanterns. Don't fight it, he said softly. This is salvation. Salvation? I spat. It's conquest. I ripped the emergency flare charge from its case, fumbling with trembling hands. If I overloaded the sub's power cell, I could ignite it. It wouldn't kill the god, but maybe it could damage the sentinel, maybe even collapse the trench. Howard lunged at me, faster than I expected. His strength was wrong, unnatural. Fingers like iron claws dug into my wrist. His spirals pulsed brighter, feeding on his rage. "You will not defy it," he bellowed, his voice a chorus. I slammed my forehead into his, breaking his grip. He staggered, dazed, and I jammed the charge into the console. Sparks erupted, fire licking across panels. Warnings screamed, the cabin filling with acrid smoke. The Sentinel reacted instantly. Its massive appendage slammed against the sub, trying to smother the fire, but it was too late. The overload surged through the systems, detonating the ballast. A roar split the trench, metal, water, god, and Sentinel all shrieking as one. The sub exploded in white light. For a heartbeat, I felt myself dissolve, scattering like the drowned. Yet even as everything burned away, the voice whispered one last time, gentle, certain, "The surface will know." Then came silence.